The scalpel trembled in Dr. Marcus Venn's hand as he stared at the patient strapped to the gurney, a man who'd broken 3 orderlies' bones in under 90 seconds. Blood streaked the vinyl restraints. The heart monitor screamed a jagged rhythm that made no medical sense. And somewhere in the chaos of Black Ridge Federal Medical Center's emergency wing, a quiet voice cut through the mayhem like a blade through silk. "Don't sedate him." Everyone turned. The woman standing in the doorway wore scrubs 2 sizes too big and an ID badge, so new the laminate still smelled like plastic. Sarah Hale, transfer nurse. Nobody. "You'll trap him in the battlefield," she said, stepping forward, "and he'll never come back." Dr. Venn's jaw tightened. "Who the hell?" But she was already moving toward the patient, whose eyes rolled white, fists hammering the rails hard enough to crack steel. This wasn't psychosis. This was war. And Sarah Hale knew exactly which war. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, New York, London, Tokyo, your small town nobody's heard of, drop a comment and tell me where this story reaches you. I want to see how far the truth can travel. Hit subscribe. You'll want to see how this ends. The fluorescent lights in Black Ridge Federal Medical Center had the kind of flicker that made you feel like you were already dead and just hadn't noticed yet. Sarah Hale had been standing in the intake corridor for 6 minutes, watching orderlies and residents rush past her like she was a potted plant. Nobody acknowledged her. Nobody asked for her credentials. She might as well have been invisible. Good. She adjusted the strap of her canvas bag and scanned the hallway. 3rd door on the left. Trauma Bay 6. The door was reinforced steel with a wire mesh window, and through it she could see the silhouette of a man thrashing against restraints. 2 security guards flanked the entrance, arms crossed, faces blank. One of them had a fresh bruise spreading across his cheekbone. "Nurse Hale?" Sarah turned. A tired-looking woman in seafoam scrubs stood beside her, holding a clipboard like a shield. Her name tag read Carla Moss, RN Supervisor. "That's me." "You're the transfer from Richmond?" "Correct." Carla's eyes flicked to the trauma bay door, then back to Sarah. "You sure you want to start today? We've got a situation." "I heard." "Did you hear he put 2 men in the ICU?" "I heard that too." Carla's expression shifted, somewhere between suspicion and relief. "Dr. Venn's about to authorize a medical coma. Probably for the best. Guy's a veteran, came in delirious, violent. We don't have the staff to manage him." Sarah didn't respond. She was already reading the chart Carla handed her, eyes moving fast. Ethan Cross. Age 34. Former Marine Corps. Deployed 3 tours, discharged under medical review. Admitted 0-300 hours with acute psychotic episode, severe agitation, possible PTSD exacerbation. She flipped the page. No known allergies, no family contact. That last part was a lie. "Where's Dr. Venn now?" Sarah asked. "Inside, prepping the sedation protocol." "I'd like to observe." Carla hesitated. "He's not exactly welcoming right now." "I'll take my chances." The supervisor shrugged and stepped aside. Sarah moved toward the door, and one of the guards put a hand up. "Staff only." She flashed her badge. "I am staff." He didn't budge. Dr. Venn said no one else inside. Sarah met his eyes, calm and cold. "Then tell Dr. Venn that Nurse Hale is here to consult on the patient's combat-related trauma response. He can either let me in, or he can explain to the hospital board why he ignored a specialist." The guard blinked. Carla coughed into her hand. After a beat, the guard stepped aside. Sarah pushed through the door. The smell hit her first. Sweat, antiseptic, something sharp and metallic. The trauma bay was a mess. IV stands toppled. A tray of instruments scattered across the floor. And in the center of it all, strapped to a gurney with leather restraints that looked like they belonged in a different century, was Ethan Cross. He wasn't thrashing anymore. He was still. Too still. His chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid bursts, and his eyes, those eyes, stared at the ceiling like he was watching something no one else could see. Dr. Marcus Venn stood beside the gurney, syringe in hand, his white coat streaked with what looked like coffee or blood or both. He glanced up when Sarah entered, irritation flashing across his face. "Who are you?" "Sarah Hale, transfer nurse. I'm here to I don't care. Get out." Sarah didn't move. "You're about to sedate him." Observant? That's a mistake. Ven's jaw clenched. He was in his 40s, graying at the temples, the kind of doctor who'd spent enough years in the system to stop caring about bedside manner. Miss Hale, I don't know what they told you in Richmond, but here we don't let nurses override medical decisions. I'm not overriding, I'm advising. I didn't ask for advice. You should. Ven's hand tightened around the syringe. This man is a danger to himself and everyone in this facility. If I don't sedate him, someone's going to die. Sarah stepped closer, her voice dropping. If you sedate him, he's going to die. That got his attention. She gestured to the monitor. Look at his vitals. Heart rate's 160, BP's spiking, but his oxygen saturation's holding at 98%. He's not in respiratory distress. He's not hypoxic. He's not dying. He's psychotic. He's reliving combat. Ven scoffed. What's the difference? The difference, Sarah said quietly, is that if you force him into a coma while his brain's still locked in a firefight, you'll trap him there, chemically, neurologically. And when he wakes up, if he wakes up, he won't know where he is. He'll think he's still under fire, and the next person who touches him will be the enemy. Ven stared at her. Where the hell did you get your psych training? Field experience? You're a nurse. I wasn't always. The room went quiet except for the beep of the heart monitor and the rasp of Ethan's breathing. Ven looked at her for a long moment, then at the syringe, then back at Ethan. Fine, he said. You've got 5 minutes. If he doesn't stabilize, I'm putting him under. Sarah nodded. She set her bag down on the counter, pulled out a pair of latex gloves, and moved to the side of the gurney. Ethan's eyes didn't track her. He was staring at the ceiling, lips moving soundlessly, fingers twitching against the restraints. Up close, she could see the scars. Old ones, surgical, running along his forearm, shrapnel wounds. She'd seen the report. She leaned in, just close enough that her voice would cut through the noise in his head. Ethan? No response. Ethan Cross. His jaw tightened. Sergeant Cross, she said, her tone shifting, firmer now, clipped. This is Overwatch. Do you copy? His eyes snapped to hers. For a second, the world seemed to stop. The fluorescent lights, the beeping monitor, the shuffle of Ven's footsteps behind her, all of it fell away. Ethan's pupils were blown wide, but there was recognition somewhere in the chaos. His lips parted. Overwatch? Sarah's throat tightened. She forced herself to stay steady. Affirm. You're stateside. Mission complete. Stand down. His breathing hitched. Where's Ramirez? Where's Kovic? She didn't answer. Couldn't. His voice cracked. Where's my team? Sarah reached out slowly, her hand hovering over his wrist. You're safe, Sergeant. You're home. I'm not. His voice broke. I'm not home. I'm still there. I can hear them. I can focus on my voice. I can hear the rounds. I can smell the smoke. I can... Ethan. She said his name like a command. Look at me. He did. You're in Black Ridge Federal Medical Center, Virginia. It's 0400 hours. You were brought in after a panic episode. You are not under fire. You are not in danger. Do you understand? His chest heaved. Sweat dripped down his temple. For a moment, she thought he'd snap again, break the restraints, lunge, fight. But then his eyes focused, really focused. You... His voice was hoarse. I know your voice. Sarah's pulse spiked. You need to calm down. I know you. Sergeant, you were in my ear that night. You were... His breathing quickened. You were the one giving coordinates. She pulled her hand back. You sent us in. The room felt smaller. Ven shifted behind her, but Sarah didn't turn around. She kept her eyes locked on Ethan's. That was a long time ago, she said quietly. You sent us into a kill box. Her jaw tightened. I sent you where you were ordered to go. My team died. I know. You know? His voice rose, rough and raw. You know? They burned alive and you... I didn't pull the trigger, Sarah said, her voice hard now. But I was there. I heard everything. I know what happened. Ethan stared at her, chest heaving, eyes wild. Then slowly, the fight drained out of him. His head fell back against the pillow. Why are you here? He whispered. Sarah glanced at the monitor. His heart rate was dropping. 150, 140, 135. Because, she said, you're not the only one who survived that night. Ven cleared his throat. Nurse Hale, give me another minute. His vitals are stabilizing, but 1 minute. Ven stepped back, muttering something under his breath. Sarah ignored him. She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. Ethan, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You're in danger. His eyes flicked back to hers. Not from the past, from right now. What are you talking about? She glanced at the IV line running into his arm, then back at him. Someone altered your medication. His brow furrowed. What? The bag. It's been tampered with. I checked the intake logs. You were supposed to get saline and a mild sedative. What you're getting is something else. How do you... Because I've been tracking you for 3 months, ever since you started asking questions about what happened that night. Ethan's face went pale. You've been following me? Protecting you. From who? Sarah straightened, her voice cold and clear. From the people who wanted your team dead in the first place. Before he could respond, the door swung open. Carla Moss stepped in, looking flustered. Dr. Ven, there's a man here to see the patient. Says he's with the VA. Ven frowned. At 4 a.m? That's what I said. Sarah's blood went cold. She turned to Carla. What does he look like? Suit? Expensive, older guy, silver hair. Sarah's hand moved to her bag. Did he give a name? Kane. Victor Kane. The name hit like a fist to the gut. Sarah's mind raced. She turned back to Ethan, whose eyes had gone wide. That's him, Ethan whispered. That's the guy, the one I told you about, the contractor. Sarah's hand closed around the small canister in her bag. A compact medical injector, the kind used for emergency epinephrine. But this one wasn't filled with epinephrine. Dr. Ven, she said, her voice steady, I need you to disconnect that IV now. What? Why? Do it. Miss Hale, I don't know what kind of game you're... Sarah pulled the injector from her bag and held it up. Ven froze. That IV is laced with a paralytic agent. If you don't disconnect it in the next 30 seconds, Ethan Cross will go into respiratory arrest, and you'll spend the rest of your career explaining why you ignored a specialist's warning. Ven's face went white. He looked at the IV bag, then at Sarah, then at Ethan. This is insane. 30 seconds. He moved, fast. Hands shaking, he clamped the line and pulled the needle from Ethan's arm. The moment it was out, Sarah grabbed the IV bag and held it up to the light. The fluid inside was clear, but there was a faint cloudiness near the bottom, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. Jesus Christ, Ven breathed. Sarah turned to Carla. Where's Kane now? Waiting in the lobby. Stall him. Tell him the patient's unstable. Tell him anything. Just keep him out of this room. Carla's eyes darted between Sarah and Ven. What the hell is going on? Do it. Now. Carla hesitated, then nodded and hurried out. Sarah turned back to Ethan and started unbuckling the restraints. What are you doing? Ven asked. Getting him out of here. You can't just... Watch me. The restraints came off. Ethan sat up slowly, rubbing his wrists, his eyes locked on Sarah. Who are you? He asked again. Sarah met his gaze. Someone who made a mistake. And I'm going to fix it. She pulled a set of clean scrubs from her bag and tossed them to him. Get dressed. We've got maybe 2 minutes before Kane figures out something's wrong. Ethan didn't move. Why should I trust you? Because, Sarah said, slinging her bag over her shoulder, the woman who sent you into that ambush is the only one who knows how to get you out alive. He stared at her. Then slowly he reached for the scrubs. Ven stepped forward. I can't let you leave. This is... Sarah cut him off. You can report me. You can call security. But if you do, Ethan Cross will be dead by morning and you'll have helped kill him. Your choice. Ven's mouth opened, closed. He looked at Ethan, then at the IV bag in Sarah's hand. Go, he said quietly. Sarah didn't wait. She grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him toward the door. They slipped into the corridor just as the lights in the lobby flickered. Once, twice. A signal. Kane was moving. Sarah's heart hammered as they ducked into a storage alcove. Ethan leaned against the wall, still unsteady, his face pale. "Where are we going?" he rasped. Sarah pulled a small black device from her pocket, a keycard cloner. "Service elevator, basement level. There's a morgue exit that leads to the loading dock." "You've done this before." "Once or twice." "Who the hell are you?" She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Someone who doesn't leave people behind. Not anymore." Footsteps echoed down the hall. Sarah pressed a finger to her lips. They waited, barely breathing, as two security guards passed by, radios crackling. When the coast was clear, Sarah moved, fast. Ethan followed, his legs shaky but functional. They made it to the service elevator and Sarah swiped the cloned card. The doors slid open. Inside, the air was cold and metallic. Sarah hit the button for B2. The elevator lurched downward. "If we make it out," Ethan said, his voice low, "you're going to tell me everything." Sarah nodded. "If we make it out." The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto a dim hallway lined with white tile. The smell of formaldehyde hung in the air. Sarah led Ethan past rows of steel gurneys until they reached a heavy door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." She pushed it open. Cold night air rushed in. They stepped outside into the loading dock. A single flickering streetlight cast long shadows across the pavement. Sarah scanned the area. Empty. For now. "Stay close," she whispered. They moved toward a black sedan parked at the far end of the lot. Sarah pulled the keys from her pocket and unlocked it. Ethan climbed into the passenger seat, still looking like he might pass out. Sarah started the engine. The headlights flared to life. And then, from the shadows, a figure stepped into the light. Victor Kane. He stood in the middle of the driveway, hands in his pockets, a faint smile on his face. Behind him, three men in dark suits emerged from a black SUV, all of them armed. Sarah's hands tightened on the wheel. Kane walked forward slowly, his shoes clicking on the asphalt. He stopped a few feet from the hood and leaned down, peering through the windshield. "Miss Hale," he said, his voice muffled but clear. "I was hoping we could talk." Sarah didn't respond. Her mind raced through options. Reverse, accelerate, ram. But the SUV had blocked the exit behind them. Kane tapped on the glass. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Ethan's hand moved to the door handle. Sarah grabbed his wrist. "Don't!" Kane's smile widened. "Smart boy, listen to the lady." He straightened, brushing off his coat. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to step out of the car, both of you, and we're going to have a civil conversation about what you think you know." "And if we don't?" Sarah called through the glass. Kane's smile didn't falter. "Then I'll have my associates drag you out. And trust me, they're not as polite as I am." Sarah's hand moved to the gear shift. Ethan's breathing quickened beside her. "Do you have a plan?" he muttered. "Working on it." Kane raised a hand and the three men stepped forward, weapons drawn but not yet aimed. "Last chance," Kane said. Sarah's fingers hovered over the ignition. Her pulse roared in her ears. Every second felt like an hour. And then she saw it. A flicker of movement in the side mirror. A fourth figure, approaching from the side entrance of the hospital. Tall, military posture. Sarah's breath caught. The figure stepped into the light, and her stomach dropped. It was a man in a Navy uniform, silver oak leaves on his collar. Captain's insignia. He walked with the kind of authority that made people step aside without thinking. His face was hard, weathered, and when his eyes locked onto the scene, his expression didn't change. But Sarah knew that face. She'd seen it in classified briefings. In debriefs she wasn't supposed to remember. Captain Nathaniel Cross. Ethan's father. Ethan's entire body went rigid. Sarah felt it, the shift in the air, the way his breathing stopped mid-inhale. She didn't need to look at him to know what he was seeing. The man in the Navy uniform stood under the flickering streetlight like a monument carved from stone, his face unreadable, his posture military perfect despite the late hour and the chaos unfolding in front of him. Victor Kane turned, his polished smile faltering for just a fraction of a second. "Captain Cross, what a pleasant surprise." Nathaniel Cross didn't acknowledge the greeting. His eyes swept across the scene, the armed men, the blocked sedan, Sarah's white knuckles on the steering wheel, and finally through the windshield, his son. The recognition was instant, but his expression didn't crack. Not even a little. "Stand down," Nathaniel said. His voice carried the kind of authority that made grown men reconsider their life choices. Kane's smile returned, oily and smooth. Captain, I appreciate your concern, but this is a private matter. Medical transport. Nothing that requires... I said, stand down. The three armed men hesitated, glancing at Kane. Kane's jaw tightened, but he raised a hand and they lowered their weapons. Not holstered, just lowered. Sarah's mind raced. This wasn't a rescue. This was a complication. She'd read Nathaniel Cross's file 3 years ago, when she was still running intelligence for Black Ops missions that didn't officially exist. Decorated officer. Impeccable record. 3 deployments. 0 tolerance for insubordination. And according to every piece of classified intel she'd ever seen, he had no idea what his son had stumbled into the night his team died. Or he did, and he'd been covering it up ever since. Nathaniel stepped closer to the car, his eyes never leaving Ethan. Son, get out of the vehicle. Ethan didn't move. His hand was still on the door handle, but his fingers had gone white. Sarah could see his chest rising and falling too fast, the kind of breathing that came right before a full-blown panic attack. Ethan, Nathaniel said again, softer this time, it's over. Come with me. Don't, Sarah whispered. Ethan's head snapped toward her. That's my father. I know. He can help. He can't. How the hell do you know that? Sarah's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. The SUV behind them was still running, exhaust curling into the cold air. The driver hadn't moved, but his silhouette was tense, ready. She looked back at Nathaniel, who was watching her now with the kind of sharp focus that made her feel like he could see straight through the windshield and into her skull. Because, Sarah said quietly, if he could help, you wouldn't have ended up in that trauma bay with a paralytic in your IV. Ethan's face drained of color. He looked at his father, then back at Sarah. You're saying he's involved? I'm saying we don't know who to trust. And right now, the only person who's tried to kill you tonight is standing 20 feet away, smiling like this is all a misunderstanding. Kane chuckled. Miss Hale, you have quite the imagination. Sarah ignored him. She turned to Ethan, her voice urgent. If you get out of this car, you're not walking away. You know that, right? Ethan's throat worked. He looked at his father again, and for a moment Sarah thought he might actually open the door. Thought he might step out and trust the one person who was supposed to protect him. But then Nathaniel spoke again, and everything changed. Ethan, I need you to listen to me very carefully. The woman you're with is not who she says she is. She's a former intelligence officer who went rogue 3 years ago. She's wanted for treason, espionage, and the unauthorized disclosure of classified information. If you stay with her, you'll be charged as an accessory. Sarah's stomach dropped. Not because it was a lie, because it wasn't. Ethan turned to her, his eyes wide. Is that true? She didn't answer. Sarah, is it true? Her hands tightened on the wheel. It's more complicated than that. That's not a no. Ethan, did you go rogue? Yes. His face twisted. Did you disclose classified intel? To expose the people who killed your team? Yes. Jesus Christ, Kane's voice cut through the tension like a knife. You see, Sergeant Cross, Miss Hale has been lying to you from the moment she walked into that hospital room. She's not here to protect you. She's here to use you to finish what she started 3 years ago when she tried to destroy the reputation of honorable men who were simply doing their jobs. Sarah's pulse hammered in her ears. She needed to move, needed to get Ethan out of here before Kane's people closed in. But the exit was blocked, and if she reversed, she'd slam straight into the SUV. Unless. Her eyes flicked to the narrow gap between the loading dock and the hospital's east wing, a service alley, barely wide enough for a compact car, let alone a sedan. But it was the only route that wasn't covered. She shifted into reverse. What are you doing? Ethan asked. Buying us time. That's a wall. It's an alley. Sarah! She slammed the gas. The sedan shot backward, tires screeching, and she yanked the wheel hard to the left. The SUV driver reacted a split second too late, lurching forward to block her, but Sarah was already spinning the car around. The back end clipped the SUV's front bumper with a metallic crunch, and then she was accelerating toward the narrow gap. We're not gonna fit, Ethan shouted. We'll fit. They didn't fit. Not comfortably. The side mirrors exploded as the sedan scraped through the alley, sparks flying, metal shrieking against brick. Sarah kept her foot on the gas, her jaw clenched, her entire focus on the sliver of open pavement ahead. Behind them, she heard shouting, footsteps, the slam of car doors. The alley opened onto a side street. Sarah yanked the wheel right and floored it, the sedan fishtailing before the tires found traction. She didn't slow down, didn't look back, just drove. Ethan was gripping the dashboard, his knuckles white, his breathing harsh. Where are we going? Away from here. That's not a plan. It's the only one we've got. He twisted in his seat, looking through the rear window. They're following us. Sarah glanced in the mirror. The SUV had made it through the alley, barely, and was gaining fast. She cursed under her breath and took a hard left, cutting through a red light. Horns blared. A delivery truck swerved, missing them by inches. You're going to get us killed, Ethan said. Better than the alternative. She took another turn, then another, weaving through the empty streets of Black Ridge's industrial district. The SUV stayed on them, relentless. Sarah's mind raced. She needed to lose them, but the sedan was too slow, too damaged. The engine was making a sound it definitely shouldn't be making. And then she saw it. A construction site, half-finished buildings surrounded by chain-link fencing. The gate was open. No guards. No lights. Sarah jerked the wheel and shot through the gate. The sedan bounced over uneven ground, headlights cutting through the darkness. She killed the lights and veered behind a stack of shipping containers, slamming the brakes. The car skidded to a stop, hidden in the shadows. Get out, she whispered. Ethan didn't argue. They climbed out, moving fast and quiet. Sarah grabbed her bag from the back seat and led Ethan deeper into the construction site, weaving between piles of rebar and concrete slabs. Behind them, she heard the SUV's engine growing louder, tires crunching over gravel. They ducked behind a half-built wall just as the SUV rolled past, its headlights sweeping across the site. Sarah pressed her back against the cold concrete, her hand on Ethan's arm to keep him still. They waited. 30 seconds. A minute. The SUV's engine idled, then revved. It circled the site once, twice. Then finally, it drove off. Sarah let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Ethan slumped against the wall, his chest heaving. Your father, he said after a moment. You think he's working with Kane? I don't know. But you suspect it. Sarah hesitated. I think your father knows more than he's letting on. Whether that makes him complicit or just compromised, I can't say. But the fact that he showed up at the exact moment Kane did, that's not a coincidence. Ethan's face was pale in the darkness. He wouldn't. People do a lot of things they wouldn't when their careers are on the line, or their lives. You don't know him. No, but I know men like him, and I know how this works. Ethan looked away, his jaw tight. Sarah could see the war happening behind his eyes. The boy who wanted to believe his father was a hero, and the man who'd seen too much to take anything on faith. She pulled out her phone and checked the screen. No signal. Of course. She pocketed it and scanned the area. They couldn't stay here. Kane's people would come back with reinforcements, and when they did, this construction site would turn into a kill box. We need to move, she said. Ethan nodded. They started walking, sticking to the shadows, cutting through the site until they reached the far fence. Sarah pulled a pair of wire cutters from her bag and made quick work of the chain link. They slipped through and emerged onto a quiet residential street, rows of identical houses, dark and sleeping. Sarah led them 3 blocks south, then ducked into an alley behind a corner bodega. She tried her phone again. This time it connected. 1 bar. She dialed a number she'd memorized years ago and prayed it still worked. It rang once, twice. Then a gruff voice answered, Yeah. It's Sparrow. A pause. You've got a lot of nerve calling this line. I need an extraction. 2 people. Black Ridge. You're joking. Do I sound like I'm joking? Another pause. Where? Sarah rattled off the coordinates. The voice on the other end grunted. Give me 40 minutes. We might not have 40. Then you better find a place to hide. The line went dead. Sarah pocketed the phone and turned to Ethan. We've got help coming, but we need to stay out of sight until then. Who was that? Someone who owes me a favor, or thinks he does. Ethan studied her, his eyes searching her face. Why are you doing this? I told you, I'm fixing a mistake. That's not an answer. Sarah looked away. Your team died because I gave them bad intel. Intel I was ordered to pass along without verifying. I didn't question it. I should have. And because I didn't, 8 men burned to death in a valley that wasn't supposed to be hostile. Her voice was flat, emotionless. The kind of tone people used when they'd told the same story too many times, and it had lost all meaning except the weight it carried. Ethan's expression softened, but only slightly. That doesn't explain why you're here now. Because 6 months ago, I found out the intel wasn't bad. It was planted. Someone wanted your team in that valley. Someone wanted them dead. And when I started digging, I found a paper trail that led straight to Victor Kane. Ethan's eyes widened. Kane ordered the hit? Not directly, but he knew, and he benefited. Your team stumbled onto something they weren't supposed to see. A weapons deal between Kane's company and a group we were supposed to be fighting. If that got out, it would have cost him billions. Maybe his freedom. So he had us killed. He had you silenced. You weren't supposed to survive. Ethan leaned against the brick wall, his face drawn. And my father? Sarah hesitated. I don't know, but he was your team's commanding officer. He signed off on the mission. If he didn't know what was happening, then someone above him did. And if he did know, she didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Ethan's hands curled into fists. If he knew, then he let us walk into a trap. Sarah didn't respond. She didn't have to. They waited in silence, the cold seeping through their clothes, the distant sound of traffic, the only proof the world was still turning. Sarah checked her watch. 20 minutes. Then 30. She was starting to think the extraction wasn't coming when she heard it, the low rumble of an engine, closer than it should be. She tensed. Ethan heard it too. They pressed against the wall, barely breathing. A black panel van rolled into the alley, headlights off, moving slow. It stopped 10 feet away. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a leather jacket and a scowl that looked permanent. He had a scar running down the left side of his face, and his eyes swept the alley like a predator scanning for threats. Sparrow, he said. It wasn't a question. Sarah stepped into the light. Reeves. The man, Reeves, looked her up and down, then glanced at Ethan. This the package? That's him. Reeves grunted. Get in. We're on a clock. They climbed into the back of the van. The interior was stripped down. No seats except for a bench bolted to one side. The floor was metal, cold and unforgiving. Reeves slammed the door shut and got back in the driver's seat. The van lurched forward. Sarah sat on the bench, her bag in her lap. Ethan sat across from her, his eyes still wary. Where are we going? He asked. Safe house, Reeves called from the front. 2 hours north, off the grid. You'll be ghosts until we figure out what the hell is going on. Ethan looked at Sarah. And then what? Then we finish this. How? Sarah pulled a small USB drive from her bag and held it up. This is everything I've been able to dig up on Kane. Financial records, communications, testimonies from contractors who are willing to talk off the record. It's not enough to put him away on its own, but it's a start. A start to what? Exposing him. Getting the truth out. Making sure what happened to your team doesn't stay buried. Ethan's jaw tightened. You really think that'll work? Kane's connected. He's got politicians, military brass, half the defense industry in his pocket. You think a USB drive is going to bring him down? No, but it's leverage. And leverage is the only currency that matters in this world. The van hit a pothole, jolting them. Sarah steadied herself, her eyes never leaving Ethan's. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. You can walk away. Disappear. Start over somewhere Kane can't reach you. Ethan stared at her. Is that what you did? Walk away? I tried. Didn't work. Why not? Because some things follow you no matter how far you run. Ethan leaned back against the wall of the van, his eyes closing. I'm not running. Then you're in. I'm in. Sarah nodded. She didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. They both knew what they were signing up for. A fight that would burn everything they had left to the ground. And maybe, if they were lucky, they'd crawl out the other side alive. The van drove on through the night, headlights cutting through the darkness. Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A text from an unknown number. "You have something that belongs to me." Her blood ran cold. She showed the screen to Ethan. His face went pale. "Kane," he said. "Yeah." Another text came through. "I'm willing to negotiate. You have until sunrise." Sarah typed back, "What are you offering?" The response was instant. Your life, his life, and the truth about Captain Cross. Ethan's breath hitched. The truth about my father? What does that mean? Sarah's mind raced. Kane was playing them. Had to be. But the mention of Nathaniel Cross wasn't random. Kane was dangling bait. And the worst part was, it might actually be real. "I don't know," she said, "but we're not taking the deal." "Why not?" "Because the moment we meet him, we're dead. He's not negotiating. He's stalling until he can pin us down." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Then what do we do?" Sarah looked at the USB drive in her hand, then back at her phone. An idea was forming, dangerous, reckless, probably stupid, but it was the only card they had left to play. "We don't wait for sunrise," she said. "We go on the offensive." "How?" Sarah leaned forward and tapped on the partition separating them from Reeves. "Change of plans. I need you to take us to Langston Ridge." Reeves glanced back through the partition, his expression skeptical. "That's Kane's territory. You got a death wish?" "No, I've got a plan." "Your plans usually end with people shooting at me." "Only the good ones." Reeves muttered something under his breath, but he changed course. The van turned east, heading toward the industrial sprawl on the outskirts of Black Ridge, where Kane's company, Apex Security Solutions, had its regional headquarters. Ethan stared at Sarah like she'd lost her mind. "You want to break into Kane's facility? With what? Good intentions and a thumb drive?" "I want to get into his servers. Upload this data where it can't be erased. Every news outlet, every government watchdog, every investigative journalist who's ever tried to nail Kane and came up short. We flood the zone, make it impossible to bury." "That's insane." "You got a better idea?" Ethan didn't answer, because he didn't. The van rolled on, the city lights fading behind them. Sarah checked her phone one more time. Another message from Kane. "Tick-tock, Miss Hale?" She didn't respond, just pocketed the phone and started going through her bag, taking inventory. 2 spare magazines for the compact Glock she'd stashed in a hidden pocket. A flashbang. A medical kit. Zip ties. And the USB drive. Not much. But it would have to be enough. Reeves pulled the van into a wooded area half a mile from the Apex compound and killed the engine. "This is as close as I get. You're on your own from here." Sarah nodded. "Wait for us. If we're not back in 2 hours, I'm gone." "I know the drill." She climbed out of the van, Ethan right behind her. The night air was cold, biting through her scrubs. She could see the glow of the Apex compound through the trees. High fences, floodlights, security cameras every 20 feet. Ethan stood beside her, his face grim. "You really think we can pull this off?" Sarah looked at him, then at the compound. "No." "Then why are we doing it?" "Because it's the only move we have left." She started walking. Ethan followed. They moved through the trees, staying low, staying quiet. Sarah's training kicked in, muscle memory from a life she'd tried to leave behind. She counted the cameras, mapped the patrol routes, noted the blind spots. There weren't many. They reached the perimeter fence. Sarah pulled out a compact set of bolt cutters and went to work on the chain link. The metal parted with a soft snap, and she peeled back a section just wide enough to slip through. They were inside. The compound was a maze of prefab buildings and storage units. Sarah led Ethan toward the central structure, a 3-story office block with reinforced doors and tinted windows. That's where the servers would be. That's where they needed to go. They made it to the side entrance. Sarah pulled a small device from her pocket, a keycard emulator, black market tech that could spoof any RFID signal if you had the right encryption keys. She pressed it against the reader. The light blinked red, then green. The door unlocked. They slipped inside. The hallway was empty, lit by cold fluorescent panels. Sarah moved fast, Ethan close behind. They took the stairs to the second floor, avoiding the elevator. The server room was at the end of the hall, behind a door marked Authorized Personnel Only. Sarah was halfway there when the lights went out. She froze. Ethan bumped into her back. "What just happened?" he whispered. "Emergency lockdown. Someone tripped an alarm." "Was it us?" "Doesn't matter, we're locked in now." Red emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in a hellish glow. And then, from somewhere deep in the building, a voice echoed over the intercom. Victor Kane's voice. "Miss Hale, Sergeant Cross, welcome to Apex. I've been expecting you." Sarah's hand moved to the Glock tucked against her spine. The emergency lights pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, casting elongated shadows that twisted across the walls like something alive. Ethan's breathing had gone shallow beside her, the kind of rapid inhale-exhale that preceded either fight or flight. "Keep moving," she whispered. Kane's voice crackled through the intercom again, smooth and unhurried. "I admire the persistence, truly, but you're not leaving this building. Not with that drive, not with your lives." Sarah ignored him and pushed forward. The server room door was 20 feet ahead. She could see the biometric scanner glowing faintly in the red light. Standard corporate security, palm print, retinal scan, probably a weight sensor on the floor just inside. She had bypass tools for 2 of those. The third would require improvisation. Behind them, she heard the distinct click-clack of boots on tile. Multiple pairs. Moving fast. "Company," Ethan muttered. Sarah glanced back. 4 figures emerged from the stairwell at the far end of the hallway, silhouettes backlit by emergency lighting. They moved in formation, tactical gear, weapons raised. Private security, probably ex-military, the kind Kane hired because they didn't ask questions and didn't leave witnesses. "Run," Sarah said. They ran. The hallway was a straight shot with nowhere to hide. Sarah counted doors as they passed, offices, storage closets, all locked. The server room was still 15 feet away when the first shot cracked through the air. The round punched into the wall 6 inches from Sarah's head, spraying plaster. She didn't slow down, just ducked lower and kept moving. Ethan was right behind her, his boots slapping the floor in uneven rhythm. Another shot, then another. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, each report echoing off concrete and steel until it felt like the building itself was shooting at them. Sarah reached the server room door and yanked out the bypass kit, a small electronic device no bigger than a thumb drive. She jammed it into the scanner's data port and hit the activation button. The device beeped once, twice. The scanner's light flickered from red to amber. "Come on," she hissed. A bullet sparked off the doorframe. Sarah flinched, her hand slipping. The bypass kit clattered to the floor. She dove for it, fingers closing around the plastic casing just as another round tore through the air where her head had been a second earlier. Ethan dropped to one knee, turned, and fired twice with the pistol Sarah had given him in the van. She hadn't asked where he'd learned to shoot like that. Didn't need to. The shots were clean, controlled. One of the security guards stumbled, clutching his shoulder. The others scattered, taking cover behind a support pillar. Sarah shoved the bypass kit back into the port. The scanner beeped again. The light turned green. The lock disengaged with a heavy thunk. "Inside. Now!" They pushed through the door and slammed it shut behind them. Sarah engaged the manual deadbolt, old-school security, the kind that couldn't be overridden remotely. It wouldn't hold forever, but it would buy them time. The server room was cold, the air humming with the sound of a dozen industrial cooling units. Rows of server racks stretched from floor to ceiling, blinking LEDs casting a faint blue glow across the space. Sarah moved to the nearest terminal and pulled out the USB drive. "How long?" Ethan asked. He was standing by the door, gun raised, eyes locked on the reinforced glass window. 5 minutes to breach their firewall. Another 2 to upload. "We don't have 7 minutes." "Then cover the door." Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard. The system prompted for credentials. She bypassed the login screen with a root exploit she'd memorized years ago, back when she was running operations that required breaking into places exactly like this. The screen flickered, then opened to the file directory. Outside, something heavy slammed into the door. Once. Twice. The deadbolt held, but the frame groaned. "They're using a breaching ram," Ethan said. Sarah didn't look up. She was navigating through layers of security protocols, each one more complex than the last. Kane's IT team had done their job well, too well. She hit a firewall that required a 6-digit rotating cipher. She pulled up a decryption script and set it running. Another slam. The door shuddered. Cracks spiderwebbed across the reinforced glass. Sarah. Almost there. The cipher broke. The firewall dropped. Sarah plugged in the USB drive and started the upload sequence. A progress bar appeared on the screen, 0%. Upload at 3%, she said. Ethan fired twice through the window. The glass was bulletproof, but the shots forced the guards outside to duck. They're regrouping. We've got maybe 90 seconds before they bring in something heavier. Sarah's eyes were glued to the screen. 8%, 12%. The upload was crawling. She pulled out her phone and opened a secondary app, a dead man switch she'd set up months ago. If she didn't check in every 12 hours, the app would automatically send encrypted files to a list of journalists and federal investigators. It was insurance, but insurance only worked if you lived long enough to cash it in. She typed a message into the app. Package uploaded. Apex servers. Coordinates attached. She hit send. The message failed. No signal. The building's walls were too thick, or Kane had jammers running. Either way, the message wasn't getting out. Damn it! What? I can't send the confirmation. If we don't make it out, no one knows the data's here. Ethan glanced at her, then back at the door. So we make it out. Working on it. The upload hit 24%, then stalled. Sarah's heart sank. She checked the connection. Solid. The network was throttling the transfer. Someone on Kane's end had noticed the intrusion and was slowing it down manually, buying time for his people to break through. Sarah's fingers moved faster. She opened a second terminal window and started a parallel upload to a different server cluster on the opposite side of the building. If one upload got stopped, the other might slip through. The door took another hit. This time, the deadbolt cracked. Metal screeched against metal. Sarah. I know. The first upload reached 40%. The second was at 18%. Not fast enough. Sarah grabbed the USB drive and yanked it out, then plugged it into a different port. The system recognized it immediately and resumed the upload. 43%. 45%. A loud bang echoed through the room. Sarah looked up. The door was buckling. One more hit and it would give. We need to go, Ethan said. Not yet. Sarah? Not yet. The upload hit 52%. Sarah's eyes scanned the room, looking for an exit. There was a ventilation shaft in the far corner, grated and narrow. It would be tight, but it might lead somewhere. She committed the location to memory and turned back to the screen. 60%. The door exploded inward. The deadbolt tore free, and the reinforced panel slammed against the wall. 4 guards poured in, weapons raised. Ethan fired twice, dropping the first man. The others returned fire, bullets tearing through server racks, sparking and hissing. Sarah dropped behind a console, her Glock in her hand. She fired blind, 3 quick shots, forcing the guards to take cover. The upload bar ticked upward. 68%. 72%. Cease fire! The voice came from the doorway. Everyone froze. Victor Kane stepped into the server room, flanked by 2 more guards. He was unarmed, his hands clasped behind his back like he was inspecting a factory floor. His eyes swept the room, taking in the damage, the bodies, the chaos. Then he looked at Sarah. Miss Hale, still so determined to play the hero. Sarah didn't lower her weapon. I'm not the hero. I'm just the person who knows where the bodies are buried. Kane smiled. Metaphorically speaking, I hope. Some of them. He stepped closer, ignoring the gun pointed at his chest. You're uploading files to my own servers. Clever, but ultimately pointless. The moment you leave this room, I'll wipe everything. You know that. Maybe. But you'll have to explain why you wiped it. And that's a conversation I don't think you want to have with your shareholders. Or the DOD. Kane's smile didn't falter. You're bluffing. Am I? The upload hit 84%. Sarah could see it on the screen behind her, reflected in Kane's eyes. He saw it too. His expression shifted just slightly. The smile tightened. Stop the upload, he said, or I'll have my men kill Sergeant Cross where he stands. Sarah's jaw clenched. Ethan was pinned behind a server rack, gun raised but surrounded. 3 guards had him in their sights. One wrong move and he was dead. Do it, Kane said. Sarah's finger hovered over the keyboard. The upload was at 91%. So close. If she stopped it now, everything, the evidence, the testimonies, the financial records, would be lost. But if she didn't, Ethan would die. "Sarah," Ethan said quietly, "don't." She looked at him. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. "Finish it," he said. Kane's smile returned. How noble. But nobility doesn't stop bullets. He nodded to one of the guards. The man raised his rifle, finger moving to the trigger. Sarah made her choice. She slammed the enter key. The upload jumped to 95%, 97%. And then, just as the guard's finger tightened, the screen flashed green. "Upload complete." Kane's face went white. "No." Sarah grabbed the USB drive and yanked it free. At the same moment, Ethan moved. He rolled out from behind the server rack, firing as he went. One guard went down, then another. Chaos erupted. Sarah fired 3 rounds at the overhead lights, plunging the room into darkness, except for the faint glow of server LEDs. She ran. Ethan was right behind her. They sprinted toward the ventilation shaft, bullets chasing them, sparking off metal and concrete. Sarah reached the grate and kicked it in. The metal bent, then broke free. She dove into the shaft head first, Ethan scrambling in after her. The space was barely wide enough to crawl. Sarah's shoulders scraped the sides as she pulled herself forward, the sound of shouting and gunfire echoing behind them. The shaft angled upward, then leveled out. She could see faint light ahead, another grate, leading to an exterior vent. She reached it and kicked. Once. Twice. The grate gave way and she tumbled out onto a rooftop, cold air hitting her like a slap. Ethan emerged a second later, gasping. "We're 3 stories up," he said. Sarah looked around. The roof was flat, gravel and tar, with a fire escape on the far side. She ran for it, Ethan following. They were halfway there when the rooftop access door burst open and guards poured out. "Stop!" Sarah didn't stop. She reached the fire escape and swung over the edge, her boots clanging on the metal grating. Ethan was right behind her. They descended fast, the structure shaking with every step. Bullets pinged off the railing, striking sparks. They hit the ground and ran. The apex compound stretched out around them, a maze of buildings and fences. Sarah's mind raced, plotting routes, calculating odds. They needed to get to the perimeter, get to Reeves, get out. A spotlight snapped on, flooding the area with white light. Sarah shielded her eyes. A voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "Surrender! You are surrounded." Sarah looked around. Guards were closing in from all sides, at least a dozen of them, weapons trained. She and Ethan were trapped in the open with nowhere to go. Ethan raised his gun. "I'm not going down without a fight." Sarah put a hand on his arm. "Wait." "For what?" "Leverage." She pulled out her phone, still no signal. She cursed under her breath, then looked at the guards. They were holding position, waiting for orders. Buying time, which meant Kane was stalling, which meant he was worried. Sarah raised her voice, projecting it across the compound. "Kane, I know you're listening. The files are uploaded. They're on your servers. And in about 3 minutes, my dead man switch is going to send a command that mirrors everything to a dozen external locations. You can kill us, but you can't stop it." Silence. Then Kane's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. "You're lying." "Am I? Check your server logs. Check the network activity. You'll see the upload. And you'll see the mirroring protocol I embedded in the code. It's running right now." Another pause. Sarah could almost hear the gears turning in Kane's head. He was weighing his options. Kill them and risk the files going public, or negotiate. "What do you want?" Kane's voice was tight. "Safe passage. For both of us. And a guarantee that you won't come after us. And in return, I'll give you the kill code. Stop the mirroring protocol before it executes." Ethan stared at her. "What are you doing?" Sarah didn't answer. She was watching the guards, looking for any sign of movement. They were still holding position. Kane's voice came back. "You have a deal. Walk to the gate. My men will stand down." Sarah didn't move. "You first. Pull your men back." "I don't think you're in a position to negotiate." "Then call my bluff." "But when those files go public and your entire operation gets torn apart by federal investigators, remember that you had a chance to stop it." Another silence. Longer this time. Then, slowly, the guards began to lower their weapons. They stepped back, creating a path toward the gate. Sarah grabbed Ethan's arm. "Move! Slow!" They started walking. Every step felt like crossing a tightrope. Sarah's hand stayed near her gun, her eyes scanning for any sign of a double cross. The guards watched them pass, silent and still. They were 10 feet from the gate when Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. 1 bar of signal. A message had come through. From Reeves. "Van's compromised. They're waiting for you outside. Get to the north fence. I'll meet you there." Sarah's stomach dropped. She glanced at the gate ahead. It was wide open, too open, and just beyond it she could see the outline of vehicles. Multiple vehicles. "It's a trap," she whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened. "What do we do?" Sarah's mind raced. North fence. That was on the opposite side of the compound. They'd have to cut through the industrial zone, past more guards, more cameras, and Kane would know the moment they changed direction, but it was the only option. "Run!" They bolted. The guards reacted instantly, shouting, raising weapons. Sarah fired twice over her shoulder, not aiming, just buying seconds. She and Ethan veered left, cutting between 2 storage buildings. Bullets tore through the air, chewing up gravel and metal. They sprinted through the industrial zone, weaving between forklifts and shipping containers. Sarah's lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she didn't slow down. Couldn't. The north fence came into view, and beyond it, headlights. Reeves's van. They were 50 feet away when Sarah heard the unmistakable sound of a helicopter. She looked up. A black chopper was descending fast, spotlight sweeping the compound. It locked onto them, flooding them with light. "Keep moving!" Sarah shouted. They reached the fence. Sarah pulled out her bolt cutters and went to work on the chain link, her hands shaking from adrenaline. The metal parted. She yanked the section open and pushed Ethan through. The helicopter was directly overhead now, the rotor wash kicking up dust and debris. A voice boomed from the chopper's loudspeaker. "Stop, or we will open fire." Sarah threw herself through the fence. Reeves's van was 20 feet away, engine running. She could see him in the driver's seat, gesturing frantically. They ran. The helicopter's spotlight followed, bright and relentless. Sarah reached the van and yanked the door open. Ethan dove in. Sarah followed, slamming the door behind her. "Go!" Reeves floored it. The van lurched forward, tires spinning on loose gravel. The helicopter pursued, staying low, the spotlight never wavering. "They're going to shoot us out of the sky!" Reeves shouted. "Just drive!" The van rocketed down a dirt access road, bouncing over ruts and potholes. Behind them, Sarah could see the helicopter gaining. And then, through the rear window, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A figure was leaning out of the chopper's side door. Not a guard. Someone in a Navy uniform. Nathaniel Cross. He was holding a radio to his mouth, speaking rapidly. And then the helicopter banked hard, pulling back. The spotlight cut off. Sarah frowned. "What the hell?" Reeves glanced in the rearview mirror. "They're backing off." "Why?" "I don't know, and I don't care. Just be grateful." But Sarah wasn't grateful. She was confused. And confusion in the middle of a firefight was how people died. The van hit the main road and Reeves took a sharp right, accelerating hard. They drove in silence for 5 minutes. 10. No pursuit. No helicopter. Nothing. Ethan finally spoke. "That was my father in the chopper." Sarah nodded. "I saw. Why did he pull back?" "I don't know." "You think he's helping us?" Sarah looked at him. "I think he's playing a game we don't understand yet." Reeves pulled the van into an abandoned industrial park and killed the engine. He turned to face them, his expression grim. "You two are going to get me killed." Sarah leaned back against the wall of the van, her heart still hammering. Did the upload work? "How should I know?" She pulled out her phone. Signal was back. She opened a secure browser and navigated to one of the backup servers she'd embedded in the code. The screen loaded. And there it was, every file from the USB drive uploaded and mirrored across multiple locations. "It worked," she said quietly. Ethan exhaled. "So what now?" Sarah looked at the screen, then at him. "Now we make sure the world sees it." She started typing an email. The recipient list was long: journalists, federal investigators, congressional oversight committees. The subject line was simple: Apex Security Solutions, evidence of corruption. She attached links to the server locations, added a brief summary, and hit send. The message went out. 1 copy, then 10, then 100. Automated forwarding protocols kicked in, spreading the files like wildfire. Sarah pocketed her phone and looked at Ethan. It's done. He stared at her. Just like that? Just like that. Reeves shook his head. You really think this is going to stop Kane? No, but it'll slow him down and it'll give us time to disappear. And your deal with Kane? The kill code you promised? Sarah smiled faintly. There was no kill code. I was bluffing. Reeves laughed, a harsh bark of sound. You're insane. Probably. The van fell silent. Sarah closed her eyes, letting the adrenaline drain out of her system. For the first time in hours, she let herself breathe. And then her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. She answered. Yeah. Miss Hale. Kane's voice was calm. Too calm. Congratulations. You've just made the biggest mistake of your life. We'll see. No, you'll see. Right now, actually. Sarah's pulse spiked. What are you talking about? Check the news. She pulled up a news app on her phone. The top headline made her stomach drop. Breaking. Navy Captain Nathaniel Cross arrested on charges of treason and conspiracy. Sarah's hands went numb. She stared at the screen, the words blurring together. What did you do? She whispered. Kane's voice was smooth, satisfied. I gave them a villain. Your files just went public, which means everyone's looking for someone to blame. And who better than a decorated naval officer with ties to the very mission that got 8 Marines killed? The evidence is already being delivered to the DOJ, testimony from contractors. Financial records showing payments from Apex to offshore accounts in his name. It's airtight. You framed him. I protected my interests. Cross was always going to be a liability. You just accelerated the timeline. Ethan grabbed the phone from Sarah's hand. Where is he? Sergeant Cross, good to hear your voice. Your father is currently in federal custody. He'll be arraigned within the hour, and unless you want to watch him spend the rest of his life in a supermax prison, I suggest you reconsider your position. What do you want? The same thing I've always wanted. The files deleted, the story buried, and you two disappearing permanently. Ethan's jaw clenched. And if we do that, you'll clear my father? I'll make the evidence disappear. He'll be a free man by morning. Sarah grabbed the phone back. He's lying, Ethan. Even if we delete the files, Kane will never let your father walk. He's too much of a risk. Kane's voice cut in. Perhaps. But if you don't try, he's dead anyway. Your choice, Miss Hale. Save the man who sent Cross's team into a trap, or let him burn. The line went dead. Ethan stared at her, his face ashen. My father didn't send us into a trap. You did. I passed along the intel I was given. Your father approved the mission. Because you told him it was safe. I told him what I was ordered to say. Ethan's fists clenched. And now he's going to prison for it. Because of you. Sarah's throat tightened. Because of Kane. He's the one pulling the strings. He's the one who set this whole thing in motion. Then we stop him. How? We just burned our only leverage. The files are public. Kane's already spinning the narrative. Your father's the fall guy, and there's nothing we can do about it. Ethan's eyes were wild, desperate. There has to be something. Sarah looked away. There was. But it was the one thing she'd sworn she'd never do again. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found a name she hadn't called in 3 years. Her finger hovered over it. Sarah, Ethan said. What are you doing? She hit call. The line rang twice. Then a woman's voice answered, cold and clipped. I told you never to contact me again. I need a favor, Sarah said. No. It's about Nathaniel Cross. A pause. I'm listening. Kane's framing him, planting evidence. If we don't move fast, Cross is going down for crimes he didn't commit. And why should I care? Because you owe me. And because if Cross goes down, the entire chain of command that signed off on Operation Blackwater goes with him, including you. The silence stretched long enough that Sarah thought the line had gone dead. Then the woman spoke again. What do you need? Access to Kane's financial records, the real ones, not the ones he showed the DOJ. That's impossible. You're the deputy director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Nothing's impossible for you. Another pause. This conversation never happened. Agreed. I'll have someone contact you within the hour. Don't make me regret this. The line went dead. Sarah pocketed her phone and looked at Ethan. We've got one shot. If we can prove Kane planted the evidence, we can clear your father, but we have to move now. Ethan nodded, his jaw set. Then let's move. Reeves started the van. They pulled out of the industrial park and headed east toward the one place Sarah had sworn she'd never return to. Langley. The drive to Langley took 90 minutes through pre-dawn Virginia back roads that Reeves knew by heart. Sarah sat in the back of the van with her laptop open, fingers moving across the keyboard in rapid bursts, while Ethan stared out the window at nothing. The silence between them was heavy, loaded with everything neither of them wanted to say. When her phone finally buzzed, Sarah answered before the first ring finished. Parking garage, level 3, southeast corner, 20 minutes. The woman's voice was flat, professional. Then the line went dead. Sarah checked her watch. They'd make it with 4 minutes to spare if traffic cooperated. She glanced at Reeves in the rearview mirror. Change of plans. We're meeting someone inside the compound. Reeves's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. Inside Langley. Are you out of your mind? Probably. They've got facial recognition at every entrance. Biometric scanners. Armed guards who actually know how to shoot. Which is why we're going through the parking garage. No cameras on level 3. Structural blind spot from the renovation 2 years ago. Reeves muttered something that sounded like a prayer or a curse. Hard to tell which. But he took the exit toward McLean without slowing down. Ethan finally turned from the window. Who are we meeting? Someone who can get us what we need. That's not an answer. Sarah closed the laptop. Her name's Miranda Voss, Deputy Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. She ran Operation Blackwater, the mission that got your team killed. She's also the person who gave me the intel I passed to your father. Ethan's face went very still. She knew it was bad intel? She knew it came from a compromised source. She passed it anyway because someone higher up the chain told her to. And when everything went sideways, she buried the evidence and let me take the fall. So why would she help us now? Because if your father goes down, the whole operation gets reopened. Congressional inquiries, Inspector General investigations. And Voss gets dragged into the spotlight right along with him. She's protecting herself. We're just leverage. The van pulled into the Langley compound through a service entrance that looked abandoned but wasn't. Reeves flashed a contractor badge, forged probably, and the gate lifted. They drove past the main building, a sprawling structure of concrete and glass that looked more like a corporate headquarters than the nerve center of American intelligence. The parking garage was tucked behind it, a multi-level concrete maze that smelled like motor oil and rain. Reeves took the ramp to level 3 and killed the engine in the southeast corner, exactly where Voss had specified. The overhead lights were out. Emergency lighting cast everything in sickly yellow. I'm staying with the van, Reeves said. You've got 30 minutes. Then I'm gone whether you're back or not. Sarah nodded and climbed out. Ethan followed. They waited in the shadows between 2 SUVs, watching the elevator bank. 3 minutes passed. Then 5. She's not coming, Ethan said. She'll come. At 7 minutes, the elevator doors opened. Miranda Voss stepped out alone. She was in her late 50s, gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing a charcoal suit that looked like it cost more than most people's cars. Her eyes swept the garage with the kind of practiced efficiency that came from decades of field work. When she spotted Sarah, her expression didn't change. Walk with me. Sarah and Ethan fell into step beside her. Voss led them deeper into the garage, away from the elevators, toward a section cordoned off with orange cones and caution tape. You've got 15 minutes, Voss said without looking at them. After that, security's going to notice the blind spot in their monitoring system. Kane planted evidence implicating Nathaniel Cross, Sarah said. Financial records. Testimony from contractors. We need the real files. I'm aware. Can you get them? Voss stopped walking and turned to face them. Up close, Sarah could see the exhaustion etched into the lines around her eyes. This woman hadn't slept in days. Kane's records are housed on a private server farm in Richmond, air-gapped, no external connections. The only way to access them is physically. So we break in. You'd need a team. equipment, time to plan, none of which you have. Sarah's jaw tightened. Then what are we doing here? Voss pulled a small flash drive from her pocket and held it up. This contains access codes to Kane's backup server. He keeps a redundant copy of everything on a cloud system, encrypted, but accessible if you know where to look. The codes rotate every 6 hours. These are valid for another 40 minutes. Ethan frowned. How did you get those? Kane's head of IT used to work for me. He's cooperative when properly motivated. Sarah took the flash drive. What's the catch? The catch is that once you access that server, Kane will know immediately. He'll scrub everything within minutes. So whatever you're planning to do with those files, you better do it fast. We need to prove he fabricated the evidence against Nathaniel Cross. Voss's expression shifted. Something that might have been regret or just exhaustion. Nathaniel Cross approved a mission based on intelligence I provided. Intelligence I knew was questionable. If you expose Kane, you expose the entire chain of command, including me. I know. And you're willing to do that anyway. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. Voss studied her for a long moment. Then she reached into her jacket and pulled out a second item, a laminated badge with Sarah's photo and a fake name. This will get you into the DIA Operations Center. There's a secure terminal on the 4th floor, room 4127. Use it to access Kane's server, download everything, and then disappear before anyone figures out what you've done. Sarah took the badge. Why are you helping us? Because 3 years ago, I made a choice that got 8 men killed, and I've been trying to justify that choice to myself every day since. Voss's voice was quiet now, almost a whisper. I can't undo what happened, but maybe I can stop it from happening again. She turned and walked back toward the elevator without another word. The doors closed behind her, and she was gone. Ethan stared at the badge in Sarah's hand. You trust her? No, but she's right about one thing. We're out of options. They made it back to the van. Reeves looked at them like they were ghosts. Please tell me we're leaving. Not yet, Sarah said. One more stop. Reeves groaned but started the engine. The DIA Operations Center was a separate building on the Langley campus, smaller and more discreet than the main CIA headquarters. Sarah used Voss' badge to get through the front entrance, and the guards barely glanced at her. Ethan stayed close, playing the role of an analyst being escorted by a senior officer. They took the stairs to the 4th floor and found room 4127 at the end of a long hallway. The door was unlocked. Inside was a small office with a single desk, a computer terminal, and a window that overlooked a courtyard. Sarah sat down and plugged in the flash drive. The screen prompted for the access codes. She typed them in, her fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The system accepted the codes. A directory tree appeared, thousands of files organized by date and category. Sarah's eyes scanned the labels, looking for anything related to Nathaniel Cross or Operation Blackwater. She found it buried 3 folders deep. Cross _ fabrication _ package. Her stomach turned. She clicked it open. Inside were doctored financial records showing payments from Apex Security Solutions to an offshore account in Cross name. Bank statements. Wire transfer receipts. All of it fake, but convincing enough to fool a federal prosecutor who wasn't looking too closely. And then she found the kicker. A series of emails between Kane and a man named Douglas Merritt, a former DoD analyst who'd been fired for ethics violations. The emails outlined the plan to frame Cross in explicit detail. Dates, amounts, even a timeline for when the evidence would be discovered by federal investigators. Got it, Sarah said. She started downloading the files. A progress bar appeared. 12%, 18%. Ethan was watching the door. How long? 3 minutes? The download crawled forward. 34%, 41%. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You just triggered an alert. Kane knows you're in the system. Sarah's blood ran cold. She looked at the screen. The download was only at 56%. We need to go, Ethan said. Not yet. Sarah, we're almost there. The progress bar hit 70%, then stalled. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, checking the connection. The server was throttling the download. Kane's people were trying to cut her off remotely. She opened a second terminal window and started a brute force override, flooding the server with requests to keep the connection alive. The download resumed. 75%, 82%. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Multiple pairs moving fast. "They're coming," Ethan said. Sarah didn't look up. 89%, 93%. The door burst open. Two security guards rushed in, hands on their holsters. "Step away from the terminal!" Sarah hit the enter key. The download completed. She yanked the flash drive out and shoved it into her pocket. "Now," she said. She and Ethan bolted for the door. The guards grabbed for them, but Ethan was faster. He shoulder-checked the first guard, sending him sprawling. Sarah ducked under the second guard's arm and sprinted into the hallway. They ran. Alarms blared, red lights flashing. More guards poured out of stairwells and offices, radios crackling. Sarah took a hard right, then a left, navigating by instinct. Ethan stayed on her heels, his breathing harsh. They hit the stairwell and descended 3 steps at a time. Sarah could hear boots pounding above them, closing in. They burst through the ground floor exit and into the courtyard. Reeves' van was idling at the curb, exactly where it wasn't supposed to be. The side door was open. Sarah and Ethan dove in, and Reeves hit the gas before the door was even closed. Gunfire cracked behind them. Bullets punched through the rear doors, but the van was already moving, tires screaming as Reeves yanked the wheel hard and shot through the compound gate. They didn't slow down until they were 5 miles away, deep in the suburban sprawl of McLean. Reeves pulled into an abandoned strip mall and killed the engine. His hands were shaking. "That's it. I'm done. You're on your own." Sarah didn't argue. She pulled out the flash drive and her laptop. "Just give me 10 minutes. You said that an hour ago. This time I mean it." She plugged in the drive and started uploading the files to a dozen different secure servers, the same ones she'd used for the first batch of evidence. But this time, she added something extra, a direct email to every major news outlet in the country. Subject line: Victor Kane, evidence of fabrication and treason. The email included links to the files, a summary of the evidence, and contact information for 3 federal prosecutors who'd been trying to build a case against Kane for years. She hit send. The message went out. 1 copy, then 50, then 500. Within minutes, her phone started buzzing with notifications. News alerts. Breaking headlines. Breaking. New evidence suggests Victor Kane fabricated charges against Navy. Captain Nathaniel Cross, Apex Security CEO, accused of framing military officer to cover up illegal arms deals. Federal prosecutors open investigation into Victor Kane. Following document leak. Sarah showed the screen to Ethan. His face was unreadable. "Is it enough?" he asked. "I don't know, but it's everything we have." Her phone rang. She answered without checking the caller ID. "Miss Hale?" Kane's voice was ice. "You've made your point. Now let's discuss terms." "There are no terms. You're done." "Am I?" "Because from where I'm sitting, all you've done is make this messier. Yes, the evidence is public. Yes, the media is asking questions. But I've weathered worse storms. I have lawyers. I have friends in very high places. And most importantly, I have leverage." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. "What leverage?" "Nathaniel Cross is still in federal custody. And unless you want him to suffer an unfortunate accident while awaiting trial, I suggest you reconsider your position. You're threatening to kill him. I'm suggesting that protective custody can be surprisingly dangerous, especially for high-profile prisoners." Sarah's mind raced. Kane was cornered, desperate, which made him more dangerous than ever. "What do you want?" she asked. "You. In exchange for Cross, you turn yourself in to federal authorities, confess to espionage and treason, and I'll make sure Cross walks free." "You're insane." "I'm practical. One life for another. That's a fair trade." Sarah looked at Ethan. He was staring at her, his expression hard. "Don't," he said quietly. She turned away. "When and where?" "There's a federal courthouse in Arlington. Be there in 2 hours. Alone. If I see anyone with you, if I even suspect you've brought backup, Cross dies." The line went dead. Ethan grabbed her arm. "You're not seriously considering this. He'll kill your father. He's going to kill you. Maybe. But if there's a chance, there's no chance." Ethan's voice rose, raw and desperate. Kane's not going to let either of you walk out of there alive. You know that. Sarah pulled her arm free. Then what do you suggest? Because right now, your father's life is hanging by a thread, and Kane's holding the scissors. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no answer, neither did she. Reeves cleared his throat. For what it's worth, the kid's right. You walk into that courthouse, you're dead. Kane's probably got a sniper on every rooftop within a mile. Sarah knew he was right, but she also knew that if she didn't show up, Kane would make good on his threat. And Nathaniel Cross would die in a prison cell, branded a traitor, his name destroyed. She couldn't let that happen. I'm going, she said. Ethan's face twisted. Then I'm coming with you. No. You don't get to decide that. Yes, I do, because this is my mess. My mistake. And I'm the one who's going to fix it. She grabbed her bag and opened the van door. Ethan followed her out, his jaw set. You're not doing this alone. Sarah turned to face him. Ethan, I said you're not doing this alone. His voice was steady now, final. You spent 3 years trying to fix what happened to my team. You risked everything to expose Kane. You saved my life. So no, you don't get to walk into a trap by yourself while I sit here and do nothing. Sarah stared at him. Then slowly, she nodded. Okay, but we do this my way. What's your way? We don't go to the courthouse. Ethan frowned. Then where do we go? Sarah pulled out her phone and started typing. We go public, live, in a way Kane can't control. She sent a message to a contact she hadn't used in years, an investigative journalist named Rachel Moreno who'd spent a decade trying to expose corruption in the defense industry. The message was simple. I have everything you need to take down Victor Kane. Meet me at the Lincoln Memorial in 1 hour. Come alone. Bring a camera. Moreno's reply came back in 30 seconds. I'll be there. Sarah pocketed her phone and looked at Ethan. Kane wants a trade. We're going to give him one, but not the one he's expecting. They drove to the Lincoln Memorial in silence. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The city was waking up. Joggers on the National Mall, tourists with cameras, street vendors setting up their carts. Normal people doing normal things, oblivious to the war being fought in the shadows around them. Rachel Moreno was waiting at the base of the monument, a camera bag slung over her shoulder and a look of barely contained excitement on her face. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and sharp-dressed, the kind of journalist who'd built a career on stories no one else would touch. Sarah Hale, she said, I thought you were dead. Not yet. Moreno's eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to Sarah. Who's this? Sergeant Ethan Cross, the only survivor of Operation Blackwater. Moreno's expression shifted. Recognition, then calculation. The mission that got 8 Marines killed? That's the one. And you're here to tell me what really happened. I'm here to tell you everything. Moreno pulled out a professional-grade camera and set it up on a tripod. Start talking. Sarah did. She laid it all out, the bad intel, the weapons deals, Kane's involvement, the cover-up. Ethan filled in the gaps, describing the ambush, the fire, the friends he'd watched die. Moreno filmed every word, her face impassive, but her hand steady. When they finished, Moreno lowered the camera. This is going to destroy a lot of careers. Good, Sarah said, including yours. I don't have a career, not anymore. Moreno packed up her equipment. I'll have this on air within the hour. Every network, every platform. By the time Kane figures out what's happening, it'll be too late to stop it. Sarah nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just stay alive long enough to testify. Moreno left. Sarah and Ethan stood in the shadow of the monument, watching the city come to life. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Kane. You have 30 minutes, courthouse, or Cross dies. Sarah showed the screen to Ethan. He's running out of time. So are we. No, we just changed the rules. She typed a reply. Check the news in 10 minutes, then we'll talk. She hit send and pocketed the phone. They waited. 9 minutes, 10. Then Sarah's phone exploded with notifications, news alerts, social media posts. The interview was live. Every network was running it. The footage of Sarah and Ethan at the Lincoln Memorial, describing Kane's crimes in unflinching detail, was spreading faster than Kane could contain it. Her phone rang. She answered. Kane's voice was barely controlled fury. What did you do? I told the truth. You've just signed your own death warrant. Maybe, but I've also signed yours. Every federal agency in the country is coming for you now. The FBI, the DOJ, Congress. You can't buy or threaten your way out of this one. Silence. Then Kane spoke again, his voice cold and flat. Nathaniel Cross is being moved to a secure facility. If you want to see him alive again, you'll meet me. Now. Where? Apex headquarters, 1 hour. Come alone, or he dies. The line went dead. Ethan stared at her. He's desperate. Which makes him dangerous. We're not going, right? We just exposed him on national television. We won. Sarah shook her head. We didn't win. We just forced his hand, and now he's going to do something reckless. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Miranda Voss. Cross is being moved. Not to a secure facility, to a private airstrip outside Richmond. Kane's going to kill him and make it look like an escape attempt. Coordinates attached. You have 40 minutes. Sarah's stomach dropped. She showed the text to Ethan. We have to stop him, Ethan said. How? We don't have weapons. We don't have backup. We don't even know if we can get there in time. Another text from Voss. I've sent federal marshals to intercept. But Kane's people will reach Cross first. If you want him alive, you need to stall them. Sarah looked at the coordinates, then at Ethan. The airstrip was 35 minutes away if they drove like hell. Kane's convoy would get there in 20, maybe less. We go, she said, and we finish this. Reeves refused to drive them any farther. Sarah couldn't blame him. They took his keys instead, he owed her that much, and drove his van toward Richmond at speeds that would have gotten them arrested on a normal day. The airstrip was little more than a patch of asphalt carved out of farmland, surrounded by chain-link fence and overgrown grass. Sarah killed the headlights half a mile out and approached on foot with Ethan. They could see vehicles already there, 3 black SUVs, a transport van, and a small private jet warming up on the tarmac. Nathaniel Cross was being led toward the jet in handcuffs, flanked by 2 men in suits. He looked older than Sarah remembered, his face drawn and gray. But his posture was still military straight, his head held high despite everything. Kane stood near the jet's boarding stairs, watching, waiting. Sarah and Ethan crouched behind a rusted fuel tank at the edge of the airstrip. They had no plan, no weapons, just desperation and the knowledge that if they didn't act now, Nathaniel Cross would disappear forever. We need a distraction, Sarah whispered. Like what? She looked around. The fuel tank they were hiding behind was old, probably empty, but there was a pump station nearby and a tanker truck parked beside it, not empty. Can you hotwire a truck? She asked. Ethan followed her gaze. Probably. Why? Because we're going to crash a party. They moved fast and low, reaching the tanker truck without being seen. Ethan popped the driver's door and climbed in. Sarah watched the airstrip, counting guards. 8 visible, probably more in the vehicles. The truck's engine roared to life. Every head on the airstrip turned. Go! Sarah shouted. Ethan slammed the accelerator. The tanker lurched forward, grinding gears, picking up speed. Sarah ran alongside, then hauled herself up onto the running board as Ethan aimed the truck straight at the nearest SUV. The guards scattered. Gunfire erupted, bullets sparking off the tanker's hull. Ethan yanked the wheel at the last second, sending the truck into a skidding broadside that clipped 2 SUVs and sent them spinning. Sarah jumped off the running board and hit the ground rolling. She came up running toward Nathaniel Cross. One of the suited men raised a gun. Sarah tackled him before he could fire, her elbow driving into his throat. He went down, choking. Ethan vaulted out of the tanker's cab and grabbed the second guard, slamming him against the transport van. The man's gun clattered to the pavement. Ethan scooped it up and pointed it at Kane. Let him go. Kane didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back, a faint smile on his face. You're too late, he said. Sarah heard it then, the sound of helicopter rotors, growing louder. She looked up. 2 black choppers were descending fast, spotlight beams cutting through the early morning light. Federal marshals, Kane said. Thanks to your little media stunt, every law enforcement agency in the country is looking for me, and you've just led them right here. The helicopters touched down. Armed marshals poured out, weapons raised, shouting commands. Sarah and Ethan were surrounded in seconds. forced to their knees, hands behind their heads. Nathaniel Cross was pulled away, still in handcuffs, his eyes locked on Ethan. He opened his mouth to speak, but a marshal shoved him toward one of the choppers. Kane was being read his rights, his wrists zip-tied behind his back. But he was still smiling. "Enjoy your victory," he called to Sarah as they led him away. "It won't last." Sarah watched them load Kane into the second chopper. She waited for the relief to come, the satisfaction. But all she felt was exhaustion. And then one of the marshals pulled her to her feet. "Sarah Hale?" She nodded. "You're under arrest for espionage, unauthorized disclosure of classified information, and obstruction of justice." They cuffed her hands behind her back and led her toward the first helicopter. Ethan was beside her, also cuffed, his face pale. "Wait," he said. "She saved my father's life. She exposed Kane. Save it for your lawyer," the marshal said. They were loaded into the chopper. The rotors spun faster, and the aircraft lifted off. Through the window, Sarah could see the airstrip falling away below them, the wrecked tanker truck, the scattered vehicles, the chaos they'd left behind. Ethan leaned close, his voice barely audible over the engine noise. "What happens now?" Sarah didn't answer. She was staring out the window, watching the sunrise paint the Virginia countryside in gold. She thought about the files she'd uploaded, the evidence now in the hands of prosecutors and journalists, the truth, finally exposed after 3 years of running and hiding. Kane was in custody. Nathaniel Cross was alive. The mission was complete, but the cost was only just beginning to come due. And then her phone buzzed in her pocket. Somehow they'd missed it during the search. She couldn't reach it with her hands cuffed, but she felt the vibration against her leg, once, twice, 3 times. Messages coming in. She didn't know what they said, didn't know who sent them, but she knew with absolute certainty that whatever happened next would determine whether everything she'd sacrificed had been worth it. The helicopter banked hard, heading south toward the Federal Detention Center in Alexandria. Sarah closed her eyes and waited for whatever came next. The helicopter banked hard, heading south toward the Federal Detention Center in Alexandria. Sarah closed her eyes and waited for whatever came next. The holding cell smelled like bleach and old concrete. Sarah sat on a metal bench bolted to the wall, hands still cuffed in front of her now, watching the fluorescent light flicker overhead. Ethan was 3 cells down. She could hear him pacing, boots scuffing against the floor in an uneven rhythm that matched her own heartbeat. They'd been processed separately, fingerprinted, photographed, read their rights for the second time. Sarah had answered every question with 2 words: legal counsel. The federal agents hadn't liked that, but they'd moved on. She knew the drill. Keep quiet. Wait for a lawyer. Don't give them anything they can twist. Hours passed. The light outside the small window shifted from gold to white to gray. Sarah counted the cracks in the ceiling, 17 visible, probably more hidden beneath the paint. She was on crack number 23 when the door finally opened. A woman stepped in. Not a guard. Not an agent. Miranda Voss. She looked different without the tailored suit, dressed down in slacks and a simple blouse. No badge visible. No weapon. Just a woman who'd aged 10 years in the last 72 hours. "You shouldn't be here," Sarah said. Voss pulled a folding chair from the corner and sat down. "Probably not. They're going to ask questions." "Let them." Sarah studied her. "What do you want?" Voss reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet. She tapped the screen a few times, then turned it to face Sarah. A news broadcast was playing, live footage from outside the federal courthouse in Arlington. The steps were packed with reporters, cameras, microphones. And standing at the podium, flanked by federal prosecutors, was Nathaniel Cross. He looked older in daylight, the lines around his eyes deeper than Sarah remembered, but his voice was steady, clear, carrying over the crowd. "For 3 years I've lived with the knowledge that 8 men under my command died because of decisions I made. Decisions based on intelligence I trusted. Intelligence that turned out to be deliberately falsified by individuals who valued profit over the lives of American service members." Sarah's throat tightened. She leaned closer to the screen. Victor Kane and his associates at Apex Security Solutions orchestrated a cover-up that cost lives, destroyed careers, and nearly succeeded in framing me for crimes I didn't commit. But the truth has a way of surviving, even when powerful people try to bury it. And today, thanks to the courage of two individuals who risked everything to expose this conspiracy, the truth is finally coming to light. The camera zoomed in on Cross' face. He wasn't reading from notes. He was speaking from memory, from conviction. Sarah Hale and Sergeant Ethan Cross are not criminals. They are patriots who refuse to let corruption win. And I'm here today to ensure that their sacrifice is not in vain. The feed cut to a different angle. Reporters shouting questions, prosecutors stepping up to the microphone. Voss tapped the screen and the video paused. "That was 20 minutes ago," she said. "The DOJ has already filed motions to dismiss the charges against you and Ethan. The Attorney General personally signed off. You'll be released within the hour." Sarah stared at the frozen image of Nathaniel Cross. "Just like that? Just like that? What about Kane?" Voss's expression hardened. "Federal grand jury indicted him on 37 counts this morning. Conspiracy, fraud, obstruction, murder for hire. The DOD pulled every contract Apex ever held. His assets are frozen. His board of directors resigned en masse. The company's filing for bankruptcy by end of business today." Sarah let that sink in. 37 counts. Bankruptcy. Everything Kane had built, gone. "And you?" Sarah asked quietly. Voss looked away. "I submitted my resignation an hour ago, effective immediately. They forced you out." "No, I did it myself." Voss met her eyes again. "I passed along intelligence I knew was compromised. I buried evidence to protect the chain of command. 8 men died because I chose my career over the truth. That's not something I can walk away from." Sarah wanted to feel vindicated, wanted to feel like justice had been served, but all she felt was tired. "What will you do?" she asked. "Testify. Cooperate fully with the investigation. And then," Voss shrugged, "I don't know. Maybe disappear for a while. Figure out who I am when I'm not hiding behind a security clearance." She stood, folding the chair and setting it back in the corner. "For what it's worth, you were right, about all of it. I should have listened 3 years ago." "Yeah, you should have." Voss nodded and turned to leave. She was halfway to the door when Sarah spoke again. "The men who died, Ramirez, Kovic, the others, their families deserve to know the truth." Voss stopped. "They will. I'll make sure of it. Personally?" "Personally." And then she was gone. Sarah sat alone for another 20 minutes before a guard came to unlock the cuffs. They led her through the maze of corridors to a processing room where her belongings were returned. Phone, wallet, the flash drive still tucked in her pocket. She signed for everything, her hand cramping from the hours in restraints. Ethan was waiting in the lobby. He looked like he'd been through a war, clothes rumpled, face pale, eyes bloodshot. But when he saw her, something in his expression shifted. Relief, maybe. Or just exhaustion reaching its breaking point. "They're letting us go," he said. "I heard." "My father's outside, wants to talk to you." Sarah nodded. They walked out together into late afternoon sunlight that felt too bright after the fluorescent hell of the detention center. Nathaniel Cross was standing at the bottom of the steps, surrounded by reporters being held back by federal marshals. When he saw them, he said something to the marshals and pushed through the crowd. Up close, Sarah could see the toll the last few days had taken. The man looked like he'd been ground down to his foundation and rebuilt from scratch. But there was something else there too, a clarity that hadn't been present before. "Miss Hale," he said. "Captain?" "I owe you an apology, several actually." Sarah crossed her arms. "You don't owe me anything." "I do. 3 years ago, I approved a mission based on intelligence I didn't verify. I trusted the chain of command, I trusted the system, and 8 men died because of it." His voice cracked slightly. "I've spent every day since trying to convince myself it wasn't my fault, that I did everything right, but the truth is, I failed them, and I failed my son." He looked at Ethan, who was standing a few feet away, face unreadable. "I should have fought harder, should have demanded answers when the official story didn't make sense. Instead, I buried myself in work and let the people responsible get away with murder. That stops today." "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked. "Testify at Kane's trial, at the congressional hearings, wherever they need me, and then I'm going to spend whatever time I have left making sure this never happens to another unit." He paused. "I'd like you to help me." Sarah blinked. "What?" You spent 3 years collecting evidence, building a case. You know this better than anyone. The families of the men who died deserve answers. They deserve accountability. And they deserve someone who won't stop fighting until every last person responsible is held to account. I'm not exactly in a position to. You are now. The DOJ's offering full immunity in exchange for your cooperation with the investigation. No charges, no record, a clean slate. Sarah looked at Ethan. He nodded slightly. And if I say no? She asked. Nathaniel's expression softened. Then you walk away. You've already done more than anyone had a right to ask. But I'm asking anyway. Not as an officer, as a father who failed his son and wants to make it right. The reporters were getting louder, shouting questions, cameras flashing. Sarah could feel the weight of their attention, the story they were all desperate to tell. The whistleblower, the hero, the woman who took down a defense contractor. But that wasn't the story she cared about. I'll think about it, she said. Nathaniel nodded. That's all I can ask. He turned to leave, then stopped. Miss Hale, thank you for not giving up on the truth, even when everyone else did. Sarah watched him walk back toward the crowd of reporters. They swarmed him immediately, microphones thrust forward, questions overlapping. Nathaniel stood straight, shoulders back, and started answering. Ethan stepped up beside her. You going to help him? I don't know yet. He means it, about making things right. I know. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the chaos unfold. Then Ethan spoke again, quieter this time. I never thanked you for saving my life. Sarah turned to look at him. You don't need to. Yeah, I do. You could have walked away, could have left me in that hospital room and disappeared. But you didn't. I owed your team. No, you didn't owe me anything. You passed along the intel you were given. You were following orders. What happened to my team? That wasn't your fault. Sarah's throat tightened. Feels like it was. I know, but it wasn't. Ethan's voice was firm now, certain. The people responsible are being held accountable. That's what matters. Sarah wanted to believe that, wanted to let go of the weight she'd been carrying for 3 years. But some burdens didn't disappear just because you won. What are you going to do now? She asked. Ethan looked out at the reporters, the cameras, the crowd. I don't know, maybe testify like my dad said. Tell the world what really happened that night. Or maybe I just go home and try to figure out what normal looks like. You think you can? Go home? Be normal. Ethan smiled faintly. Probably not, but I can try. A black sedan pulled up to the curb. The rear window rolled down and Miranda Voss leaned out. Need a ride? She called. Sarah and Ethan exchanged a glance. Then they walked down the steps and climbed into the car. Voss didn't ask where they wanted to go. She just drove, heading north out of the city, away from the reporters and the chaos and the weight of everything that had happened. The silence in the car was heavy but not uncomfortable. Just 3 people who'd been through hell, trying to figure out what came next. They stopped at a diner on the outskirts of Alexandria, the kind of place that served coffee and chipped mugs and didn't ask questions. Sarah ordered eggs and toast. Ethan got pancakes. Voss just had coffee, black, which she sipped slowly while staring out the window. Kane's lawyer called me, Voss said after a while. Wants to negotiate a plea deal, Sarah looked up. And? I told him to go to hell. Ethan snorted. Good. The trial's going to be ugly. They'll drag everything out. Every decision, every mission, every piece of classified intel that got people killed. It's going to make the DOD look incompetent at best, corrupt at worst. Let it, Sarah said. Voss looked at her. You really mean that? Yeah, I do. People need to know what happens when accountability disappears. When the system protects itself instead of the people it's supposed to serve. If that makes the DOD uncomfortable, then maybe they'll think twice before covering up the next disaster. Voss set her coffee down. You've changed. So have you. Fair enough. They ate in silence. The diner was mostly empty. A couple of truckers at the counter, a family with kids in the back booth. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that the woman sitting 3 tables away had just toppled a $1 billion defense contractor. Sarah's phone buzzed. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A text from Rachel Moreno, the journalist. Interview went viral. 47 million views and counting. Every network wants a follow-up. Let me know when you're ready to talk. Sarah pocketed the phone without responding. You're famous now, Voss said. That going to be a problem? It already is. You could disappear. Change your name. Start over somewhere no one knows your face. Sarah considered that. She'd spent the last 3 years running, hiding, living under fake identities. The idea of doing it again, of vanishing into anonymity and never looking back, had a certain appeal. But it also felt like giving up. No, she said. I'm done running. Ethan looked at her. What are you going to do? Sarah thought about Nathaniel's offer, thought about the families who still didn't know the full truth about how their loved ones died. Thought about the soldiers currently deployed, trusting intel from sources they couldn't verify, following orders from people who might be more interested in profit than protection. I'm going to finish what I started, she said. The following morning, Sarah woke up in a motel room that smelled like detergent and stale cigarettes. She'd paid cash for 3 nights, registered under a name that wasn't hers, and spent the first night just staring at the ceiling while her mind replayed everything that had happened. Her phone had 43 missed calls, 17 voicemails, 62 text messages. She scrolled through them without opening any. Reporters, lawyers, people claiming to be family members of the fallen Marines. A few death threats mixed in for good measure. She deleted them all. Then she opened a secure browser and started searching. It took her 20 minutes to find what she was looking for. A small law firm in Richmond that specialized in military justice and whistleblower protection. She dialed the number. A woman answered. Brennan and Associates. How can I help you? I need to speak with someone about establishing a nonprofit organization. Focus on military accountability and veteran advocacy. May I ask who's calling? Sarah Hale. There was a pause. Then the woman's voice came back, sharper now, more focused. Please hold. Sarah waited. 30 seconds. A minute. Then a new voice came on the line. Male, older, with the kind of gravelly tone that came from decades of courtroom battles. Miss Hale, this is Jonathan Brennan. I saw your testimony yesterday. Quite the performance. It wasn't a performance. No, I don't suppose it was. She could hear papers rustling in the background. You want to start a nonprofit? What's the mission? Sarah took a breath. Investigating cases where service members died under suspicious circumstances, providing legal support for whistleblowers, holding defense contractors accountable when they put profit over lives. That's a tall order. I'm aware. It's also going to make you a lot of enemies. People with money, people with power, people who don't like being told they're wrong. I've already got those enemies. Might as well make it official. Brennan chuckled. I like you. When can you come in? This afternoon? I'll clear my schedule. Sarah hung up and stared at the phone in her hand. This was it. The point of no return. Once she started down this path, there'd be no going back to a quiet life. No disappearing into obscurity. Just years of fighting battles that would never fully end. She thought about walking away, about taking Voss' advice and disappearing, finding some small town where nobody knew her face and living out the rest of her days in peace. But then she thought about the 8 Marines who died in that valley, about the families who still had questions, about the next unit that would be sent into danger based on intelligence nobody bothered to verify. She thought about Ethan, strapped to that hospital bed, fighting ghosts because the system had failed him, and she knew there was only one choice she could make. She got dressed, grabbed her bag, and headed for Richmond. Jonathan Brennan's office was on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures. The man himself was in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing a suit that had seen better days but still carried an air of authority. He shook Sarah's hand with a grip that could crack walnuts. You're younger than I expected. You're not the first person to say that. I imagine I won't be the last. He gestured to a chair. Sit. Let's talk. They spent 3 hours going over the details. Legal structure, mission statement, funding sources. Brennan asked hard questions and didn't accept vague answers. By the time they finished, Sarah's head was spinning with incorporation paperwork and IRS regulations. You're going to need a board, Brennan said. At least 5 people. Military experience preferred. Unimpeachable ethics required. I've got one person already, Nathaniel Cross. Brennan raised an eyebrow. The captain who just testified against Kane. That's him. Bold choice. The DOD is going to hate that. Good. Brennan smiled. Anyone else? Working on it. Work faster. You can't incorporate without a board. Sarah nodded. She was about to leave when Brennan spoke again. Miss Hale, I've been doing this work for 30 years. I've seen a lot of people try to change the system. Most of them burn out. Some of them break. A few actually make a difference. He leaned back in his chair. Which one are you going to be? Sarah met his eyes. The third one. We'll see. She left his office and walked back to her car. The afternoon sun was warm on her face, and for the first time in days, she felt like she could breathe. Her phone rang. Ethan. Hey, she said. Where are you? Richmond, meeting with a lawyer. About the nonprofit? Yeah. There was a pause. I want in. Sarah stopped walking. What? I said I want in. Whatever you're building, I want to be part of it. Ethan, this is going to consume your life, every waking hour, every ounce of energy you have, and the people we're going after aren't going to play fair. I know. You could walk away, go back to school, get a normal job, live a normal life. I don't want normal. I want this. Sarah closed her eyes. Why? Because my team deserves justice. Because there are other teams out there right now who are one bad intel report away from ending up just like us. And because you can't do this alone. Sarah opened her eyes. Okay. Okay? Yeah, you're in. She could hear the relief in his voice. What do you need me to do? Can you get to Richmond by tonight? I'll be there in 2 hours. They met at a coffee shop near Brennan's office. Ethan looked better than he had the day before. Cleaner, more rested, but still carrying the weight of everything they'd been through. They ordered coffee and found a quiet corner booth. I talked to my dad, Ethan said. He's in, wants to be on the board. Brennan said we need 5 people minimum. I might have someone, my old platoon sergeant, guy named Marcus Webb. He got out 2 years ago, works for a veterans advocacy group in Baltimore. He's been trying to get answers about what happened to us since the day I got discharged. Sarah pulled out her phone. Send me his contact info. I'll reach out. What about the 4th and 5th spots? Sarah thought for a moment. I might know someone, former DOD analyst. She left after blowing the whistle on contractor fraud. Lost her security clearance, her job, everything. But she knows how the system works, and she's got nothing left to lose. Will she help? Only one way to find out. Sarah spent the next week making calls, sending emails, meeting with people who'd been burned by the same system that had nearly destroyed her. Some said no. Some hung up before she finished talking. But a few said yes. Marcus Webb drove down from Baltimore and spent 4 hours grilling Sarah about her plans. He was built like a tank, with hands scarred from years of combat and eyes that missed nothing. When she finished her pitch, he sat back and crossed his arms. You're asking me to paint a target on my back. I am. You're asking me to go to war with people who have unlimited resources and no morals. That too. And you think we can actually win? Sarah met his eyes. I think we can make them bleed. And sometimes that's enough. Webb was quiet for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. I'm in. The 5th board member was harder to find. Sarah reached out to a dozen former DOD employees, all of whom politely declined. She was starting to think they'd have to settle for a 4-person board when her phone rang. Sarah Hale? Speaking. This is Colonel Patricia Hammond, retired. I understand you're looking for board members. Sarah sat up straighter. Hammond was a legend, 30 years in the Air Force, including 2 tours as a JAG officer and 3 years running the DOD Inspector General's office. She'd resigned after being blocked from investigating contractor fraud at the highest levels. Yes, ma'am. How did you hear about... Miranda Voss called me. Said you were doing something worth paying attention to. Hammond's voice was crisp, no nonsense. Tell me about it. Sarah told her everything. The mission, the structure, the plan to investigate cases the DOD wanted to bury. Hammond listened without interrupting. When Sarah finished, Hammond said, When's your first board meeting? Next week, Thursday at 2. I'll be there. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, then called Ethan. We've got our fifth. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in front of a small conference room in Jonathan Brennan's office building. The walls were bare except for a whiteboard covered in notes. 5 people sat around the table: Nathaniel Cross, Ethan Cross, Marcus Webb, Patricia Hammond, and Miranda Voss, who'd agreed to serve as an advisor despite her legal troubles. Sarah cleared her throat. Thank you all for being here. I know this isn't what any of us expected to be doing with our lives, but here we are. She pulled up a slide on the projector. This is what we're building: the Veterans Advocacy and Accountability Initiative, VAAI. Our mission is simple: investigate military incidents where the official story doesn't add up, support whistleblowers, hold contractors accountable, and make sure that what happened to Operation Blackwater never happens again. Hammond raised a hand. Funding? We've got seed money from several anonymous donors, enough to operate for 6 months. After that, we'll need grants and donations. Legal protection? Jonathan Brennan's firm is providing pro bono support for the first year. After that, we'll need to fundraise. Office space? Brennan's leasing us this room and 2 others for $1 a month. It's not much, but it's a start. Hammond nodded. All right. What's our first case? Sarah pulled up another slide. Operation Blackwater. We're going to do what the official investigation didn't: interview every surviving member of the support units, track down the contractors who were in the area, and reconstruct exactly what happened that night. Then we're going to present our findings to the families. The room went quiet. Nathaniel Cross spoke first. That's going to reopen a lot of wounds. I know. Some of those families might not want to hear it. I know that too, but they deserve the truth, all of it. Marcus Webb leaned forward. What do you need from us? Nathaniel, I need you to use your contacts to get us access to personnel files and after-action reports. Marcus, I need you to coordinate interviews with the support units, logistics, air support, anyone who was in theater that night. Colonel Hammond, I need you to review the legal framework and make sure we're not violating any laws. And me? Ethan asked. Sarah looked at him. I need you to help me tell the story. You were there. You know what happened, and when we present our findings, it needs to come from someone who lived through it. Ethan nodded slowly. Okay. One more thing, Sarah said. This is going to be hard. Harder than anything we've done so far. People are going to fight us. The DoD will classify documents. Contractors will lawyer up. Some of the families might hate us for dragging this back into the light. But we can't stop. Not until we have the whole truth. She looked around the table. Anyone want out? No one moved. All right then, let's get to work. The next 3 months were a blur. Sarah and Ethan drove to 7 different states, interviewing former service members who'd been part of Operation Blackwater's support structure. Most were willing to talk. Some weren't. A few slammed doors in their faces. Marcus Webb coordinated with logistics personnel and found discrepancies in the fuel delivery records. Shipments that should have gone to Forward Operating Base Viper had been redirected at the last minute, leaving the Marines without air support when they needed it most. Nathaniel Cross used his network to obtain classified after-action reports. The documents painted a damning picture. Multiple warnings about the mission's risk level that had been ignored or downplayed. Intel assessments that contradicted the official narrative. And a pattern of communications between Kane's people and DoD personnel that suggested coordination. Patricia Hammond reviewed everything with a lawyer's eye, flagging potential legal issues and helping them navigate the minefield of classification laws. She also reached out to congressional staffers, quietly building support for a full investigation. And Miranda Voss testified. Not once, but 3 times. First at Kane's trial, then at a congressional hearing, and finally at a closed-door session with the DoD Inspector General. Each time, she laid out exactly how the system had failed. How intelligence had been manipulated, how careers had been prioritized over lives. Victor Kane's trial lasted 6 weeks. Sarah attended every day, sitting in the back row of the courtroom, watching as prosecutors methodically dismantled his defense. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showing illegal payments, communications detailing the cover-up, testimony from former employees who'd been threatened into silence. Kane's lawyers tried everything. They claimed he was being scapegoated, They argued that he'd acted on orders from higher-ups. They even suggested that Sarah had fabricated evidence. None of it worked. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 42 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. As the marshals led him away, Kane turned and looked directly at Sarah. His expression was blank, empty. The man who'd built an empire was gone, replaced by someone who'd finally run out of moves. Sarah didn't feel triumphant, just tired. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Sarah pushed through without comment, but one of them managed to shove a microphone in her face. "Miss Hale, how does it feel to bring down Victor Kane?" Sarah stopped. She looked at the camera, then at the reporter. "It doesn't feel like anything, because this isn't about Kane. It's about the 8 men who died because people like him put profit over duty. It's about making sure it doesn't happen again. And it's about holding every single person in that chain of command accountable, no matter how powerful they are." She walked away before they could ask another question. 6 months after Kane's conviction, VAAI held its first public event, a memorial service for the 8 Marines who died in Operation Blackwater. The families had been hesitant at first, unsure whether they wanted to relive the pain, but Sarah and Ethan had met with each one personally, explained what they'd found, and asked for permission to honor their loved ones properly. All of them said yes. The service was held at Arlington National Cemetery, in a section reserved for Marines who'd fallen in combat. Sarah stood beside Ethan as family members read letters, shared memories, and said the goodbyes they'd never gotten to say. Jennifer Ramirez spoke about her husband's love of terrible action movies and his dreams of opening a surf shop when he retired. Kovic's mother talked about her son's laugh and how much he'd loved his younger sisters. Sullivan's wife brought their daughter, who'd been 3 when her father died and was now old enough to understand what she'd lost. When it was over, Sarah approached each family and handed them a thick folder. Inside was everything VAI had found, the truth about what had happened that night, documented and verified. Some of them thanked her. Some just nodded. One grabbed her hand and squeezed hard enough to hurt. "Thank you for not forgetting them," the woman said. Sarah's voice caught. "Never." As the families dispersed, Nathaniel Cross walked over. He'd been standing at a distance during the service, head bowed, not speaking. Now he looked at Sarah with red-rimmed eyes. "I should have done this 3 years ago," he said. "You're doing it now. That's what matters." "Is it?" Sarah didn't have an answer for that. They stood in silence, watching the sun set over the rows of white headstones. Somewhere in the distance, a bugler played taps. The notes echoed across the cemetery, mournful and clear. "What's next?" Nathaniel asked. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened an email. "We've got 17 new cases, service members who died under suspicious circumstances. Families who've been asking questions for years and getting stonewalled. We're going to investigate every single one. That's going to take years." "I know." "The DOD is going to fight you every step." "Let them." Nathaniel smiled faintly. "You really don't give up, do you?" "No, I don't." He clasped her shoulder. "Good. Neither do I." 1 year after Victor Kane's conviction, VAAI had grown from 5 board members and a borrowed conference room to a staff of 12 operating out of a small office in Arlington. They'd investigated 23 cases, found evidence of negligence or corruption in 18 of them, and helped secure benefits for 47 families who'd been denied by the VA. The work was exhausting. The pay was terrible. The hours were brutal. But Sarah woke up every morning knowing exactly why she was doing it. She was sitting at her desk late one evening, reviewing files for their next case, when Ethan knocked on her office door. "Got a minute?" "Always." "What's up?" He sat down across from her, looking uncomfortable. "I've been thinking." "About?" "About what happened. Everything we went through. Everything we've built here." He paused. "I don't think I've ever said it properly, but thank you." Sarah set down her pen. "For what?" "For not giving up. On me. On my team. On all of this." His voice was quiet. "When you walked into that hospital room, I was ready to die. Not because of the PTSD or the flashbacks, but because I couldn't see a way forward. Couldn't imagine living in a world where my friends died for nothing and the people responsible just walked away. Ethan, let me finish. He took a breath. You showed me that the world doesn't have to be like that. That one person refusing to back down can actually change things. You gave me something to fight for, and I'll never be able to repay that. Sarah's throat was tight. You already have. Every family we've helped, every case we've closed, every truth we've uncovered. That's the repayment. Ethan smiled. Then I guess we're even. I guess we are. He stood to leave, then turned back. Oh, I almost forgot. There's someone here to see you. At 9 p.m.? Said it was important. Sarah followed him to the lobby. A woman was waiting there, late 30s, wearing jeans and an Army veteran's cap, holding a folder. She looked nervous. Miss Hale? I'm Corporal Diane Torres. I served in Afghanistan in 2019. My unit was involved in an operation that, well, the official story doesn't match what I remember. And after seeing what you did with Operation Blackwater, I thought maybe you could help. Sarah looked at the folder, then at Torres. Tell me everything, she said. 2 years after Victor Kane's conviction, Sarah stood in front of a congressional committee for the third time. But this time, she wasn't testifying as a witness. She was presenting findings from VAAI's investigation into systemic failures in military contracting oversight. The report was 300 pages long, backed by thousands of documents, and detailed a pattern of negligence that spanned decades. It named names, cited specific cases, and recommended sweeping reforms to prevent future abuses. Representative Angela Torres, who'd led the first hearing, leaned forward. Miss Hale, these are serious allegations. You're essentially claiming that the entire military contracting system is broken. Not broken, Representative, corrupted. There's a difference. Care to elaborate? A broken system fails by accident. A corrupted system fails by design. And what we've documented is a system where contractor profits are prioritized over service member safety, where whistleblowers are silenced, and where accountability is treated as optional. Sarah met Torres's eyes. That's not broken. That's corruption. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Torres banged her gavel. Order. We'll have order. She looked at Sarah. What do you recommend? 3 things. First, independent oversight of all contracts over $10 million. Second, mandatory whistleblower protections with real teeth, not just policies on paper. Third, criminal penalties for contractor executives who knowingly endanger service members. That's a tall order. So is sending young men and women into combat zones with equipment that doesn't work because some executive wanted to hit quarterly earnings targets. Torres sat back. We'll take your recommendations under advisement. With respect, Representative, that's not good enough. We've been taking things under advisement for decades while people died. It's time to actually do something. The hearing went on for another 4 hours. Sarah answered every question, provided every piece of evidence they requested, and refused to back down even when committee members tried to poke holes in her findings. When it was over, she walked out to find Ethan waiting in the hallway. How'd it go? He asked. Hard to say. They listened. Whether they'll act is another question. They will. You were brilliant in there. Sarah smiled tiredly. I was angry. There's a difference. Sometimes they're the same thing. They walked outside into bright sunshine. The Capitol building loomed behind them, all white stone and lofty promises. Sarah thought about the first time she'd stood here, 3 years ago, terrified and alone, wondering if telling the truth would cost her everything. It had, but it had also given her something she'd never expected, purpose. Her phone rang. Marcus Webb. Sarah, we've got a problem. What kind of problem? The DoD just classified half the documents we used in the congressional report. Retroactively, they're claiming national security concerns. Sarah's jaw tightened. Of course they are. How much of our case does that affect? About 40%, enough to undermine the recommendations. Can we fight it? Hammond's already filing appeals, but it's going to take months, maybe years. Sarah closed her eyes. This was how they did it. Not by refuting the evidence, not by proving you wrong, just by burying the truth under layers of classification and legal red tape until people stopped paying attention. What do you want to do? Webb asked. Sarah opened her eyes. The same thing we always do. Keep fighting. She hung up and looked at Ethan. The DOD's trying to bury our report. Can they? They're going to try. So what's our move? Sarah thought for a moment. Then she pulled out her phone and started typing an email. The recipient list was long. Every journalist who'd covered the Kane trial, every congressional staffer who'd expressed interest in reform, every veterans advocacy group in the country. The subject line was simple. DOD attempts to classify evidence of contractor corruption. Full report attached. She hit send. There. Now it's not classified anymore. It's public record. Ethan stared at her. They're going to lose their minds. Good. Let them. The backlash was immediate and brutal. The DOD accused Sarah of violating classification laws. Her lawyer argued that retroactive classification didn't apply to documents that were already in the public domain. The case wound its way through federal court for 8 months. Sarah won. The judge ruled that the DOD couldn't classify documents after they'd been publicly released, especially when that release served a clear public interest. The ruling set a precedent that whistleblower organizations had been fighting for decades. 3 months after the ruling, Congress passed the Military Contractor Accountability Act. It wasn't everything VAAI had asked for, but it was a start. Independent oversight boards, stronger whistleblower protections, and criminal penalties for executives who knowingly endangered service members. The day the bill was signed into law, Sarah got a call from Jennifer Ramirez. I saw the news, Jennifer said, about the new law. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's because of you, because you wouldn't let them forget what happened to my husband. Sarah's voice caught. It's because of all of us. Every family who spoke up, every service member who told their story, every person who refused to accept the official lie. Maybe. But you started it, and I just wanted to say thank you. After they hung up, Sarah sat at her desk for a long time, staring at the photos on her wall. The 8 Marines from Operation Blackwater. The 17 other service members VAAI had investigated. The faces of people who'd trusted the system and paid with their lives. She'd spent 5 years fighting to give them justice, fighting to make sure their deaths meant something, and now finally, maybe they did. But the work wasn't done. It would never be done. Because as long as there were people who valued profit over honor, there would be cases to investigate, families to support, truths to uncover. And Sarah Hale would be there, refusing to back down, refusing to be silenced, refusing to let corruption win. Because that's what heroes did. Not the ones in movies, not the ones with capes and perfect endings, the real ones. The ones who got up every morning and chose to fight, even when the odds were impossible. Even when victory seemed out of reach. Even when the cost was everything they had. 5 years after Victor Kane's conviction, Sarah Hale stood on a stage at the National Press Club, accepting an award for government transparency and accountability. The room was packed with journalists, activists, and veterans advocates. She didn't want to be there, didn't want the attention or the recognition. But Ethan had convinced her that sometimes you had to let people celebrate the wins, even small ones. I'm not good at speeches, she said into the microphone. So I'll keep this short. She looked out at the crowd. 5 years ago, I was sitting in a holding cell, convinced that telling the truth had destroyed my life. And in some ways it did. I lost my career, my security clearance, my anonymity, everything I'd worked for. But I gained something more important. I gained the knowledge that one person refusing to back down can change the world. Not overnight, not easily, but change it nonetheless. Victor Kane is in prison. The Military Contractor Accountability Act is law. 18 families have answers they didn't have before. And every day, people reach out to VAAI because they know that someone is finally listening. That's not because I'm special. It's because I refuse to accept that corruption is just how things work. That injustice is inevitable. That ordinary people can't fight back against power and win. She paused, choosing her words carefully. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The system protects itself. It always has. It always will. But the system is run by people, and people can choose to do the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it costs them everything. So if you're sitting there thinking about speaking up, about telling the truth, about fighting back against something that's wrong, do it. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Just do it. Because the world doesn't change because good people wish it would. It changes because good people refuse to stay silent. The room erupted in applause. Sarah stepped back from the microphone, suddenly exhausted. She made her way off stage and found Ethan waiting in the wings. "That was good," he said. "I hate public speaking." "I know, but you're good at it anyway." They walked out of the building together. The sun was setting over Washington, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in the city, people were going about their lives, unaware of the battles being fought in their name. But Sarah knew. And she wasn't going to stop fighting. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Because she'd learned something in that hospital room 5 years ago. Something she'd carried with her through every sleepless night, every legal battle, every moment when giving up seemed easier than continuing. She'd learned that the only thing more powerful than fear was the decision to keep going anyway. And Sarah Hale had made her decision. She looked at Ethan. "You hungry?" "Starving." "That diner in Alexandria? The one with the terrible coffee?" "That's the one." They walked toward the metro station, two people who'd been broken by a system designed to grind them down, rebuilt by their refusal to quit, and now moving forward into whatever came next. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. It never was. But they'd face it the same way they'd faced everything else. Together, unflinching, and absolutely unwilling to back down. Because justice wasn't something you found. It was something you fought for, every single day.